welcome representatives from Airservices Australia, and does anyone wish to make a very brief opening statement?
Rob Sharp, Interim Chief Executive Officer for Airservices. Pleasure to be here, and we're happy to answer any questions you have of us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr Sharp. Senator Waters.
Thanks, Chair. Hello, folks. Thanks for your time this evening. I have some questions related to Brisbane Airport, my hometown. Starting off with the Noise Action Plan, NAP 4B, as it's known, and any impact metrics that might actually be in there or might not, because I can't find them. So can you please tell me where I can find the impact metrics that is in that Noise Action Plan?
Thank you for the question. I'll have to pass that across to
Senators. Donna Marshall, Head of Community Engagement, Airservices Australia. So you're looking at the actual Noise Action Plan for Brisbane document that outlines our recommendations. That document doesn't have any specific metrics, so to speak, because what the Noise Action Plan is, it's a range of different measures that we can investigate to see if we can find some improvement. As part of that investigation, we need to engage with communities to understand what resonates and what doesn't. And as we go through that process, we refine those options down, and that's then when we can determine what those metrics might be.
Okay, so how long will that refining process take?
Depending on the packages, we've got 4 packages of work. Package 2 is around increasing over water operations. Package 3 is about reducing the frequency and concentration of operations, and Package 4 is about reviewing the wider airspace operation. Each of those packages has different levels of complexity. Package 2, we're in the final stages at the moment, and so we do have some metrics that are starting to come out for that. Package 3, probably early to mid next year, and then Package 4 would be later in 2025.
Later 2020?
2025.
Okay. So, thank you. So, just to make sure I'm clear, how are you going to assess whether there's been any net noise reductions?
So at the completion of each investigation, we do an assessment report, and in that assessment report we compare a range of metrics that are developed around the recommendation to understand the number of people affected at 70 decibels, 60 decibels, which are your higher noise readings. We also look at the total population that's overflown. We look at emissions. We look at, is it reducing concentration? Is it getting more aircraft over water? And so we look at all of those metrics and measures, and based on that and what the community has said, what industry's told us, we then make decisions holistically, looking for the best possible outcome.
Okay. So it's called a Noise Action Plan, and it's taking quite an extended period of time, and you will eventually come up with some metrics against which any future noise reductions will be measured. It seems like they just want noise reduction now, and they've made that abundantly clear through multiple community fora and multiple different organisations and a Senate inquiry that addressed this issue. So I'm at a bit of a loss to understand why there's not already some KPIs against which any reduction in noise can be measured, or an increase for that matter.
Senator Peter Curran, Airservices Deputy Chief Executive Officer. If I may just add to what Ms Marshall said, as we've gone through each of the different stages and proposed possible changes to the community, we've published data that shows what we expect the change would result in. As Ms Marshall said, that's related to population overflown, change in decibels, but also in relation to flights over water using a particular operating mode, and we've been able to expect explain what the current experience is in terms of what percentage of flights are operating over water today, and once we implement a new mode, what the percentage we think will be in 2025 or is forecast to be. And then we'll report back against how did we go against that forecast improvement. So we are, as we go, explaining to the community what we think the benefits and trade-offs will be for each of these options, and making that clear as part of each package.
Okay. So are they published somewhere? Can the community go and check that?
Senator, yes,
and
they are.
when will your SOD Props 1 go up?
Sorry, I missed the second
When will your
part.
SOD Props 1 go up?
So the SOD Props relates, is the one I was just referring to on
Yes, I
over water.
gathered
So that we expect to increase from November this year, following execution of a ministerial direction, and we're forecasting that we'll go from about 2.3% of flights in SOD Props, which was the experience in 2023, and we're forecasting that in 2025 that should increase to about 5.3%, so a more than doubling in terms of flights. Another metric we produce is the number of hours that we will operate in that mode for.
Yes.
Typically that's sensitive times of day, night time and
Yes.
weekends. And we expect a substantial increase from in 2023. 8.7% of hours of the year we were in SOD Props mode, and we believe that will increase to 12.3% in 2025.
Okay. So that's your aspiration, and then you'll measure it and put a report on your website about whether that aspiration was met.
Correct, and we communicate that via our community engagement website today in a range of material that we publish there, and then we engage communities, as Ms Marshall has said, and we talk exactly through those options and the sorts of benefits and trade-offs we anticipate each option will necessitate.
Okay. Can I just ask in relation to the noise action plan, my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong because I'd love to be wrong, is that there's actually no net noise reductions planned. It's more noise sharing. So is that, can you please dissuade me of that? Because I'm sure the community would be thrilled if I was wrong about that.
Yeah, there's actually a combination, Senator. So the noise sharing comes more out of Package 3 and Package 4, where we're reducing concentration and looking at the wider airspace operation for those noise sharing opportunities. The net noise reduction is really, it's around our Package 2 work in terms of that SOD Props mode that Mr Curran was just speaking to. For every flight that we can operate in SOD Props, between 300 and 500,000 less people are overflown, and that is a net noise reduction in terms of the number of people affected by aircraft noise.
Okay, but that's not a target as such? It's not in the noise action plan as a KPI because you're still completing Package 2, you told me before.
No, as I said, there's no KPIs actually contained within the noise action plan. The noise action plan is a plan, a series of recommendations and actions that we'll investigate to the fullest extent to understand what opportunity they have in terms of improving noise outcomes for the residents of Brisbane, and then we work through those with the community, sharing the data that Mr Curran was talking about so that they can give us informed feedback, and from that we then make a decision on what should be implemented and what won't actually be supported by the community.
Okay. Just coming to that segmentation, you've mentioned that Packages 2, 3 and 4. My understanding is that the TRACS report recommended a holistic reorganisation and a redesign of the airspace back in 2022, which I thought those recs had been accepted in full, but you haven't put that bit in any of the Package 2 and 3. That's in Package 4, which you said was coming later in 2025. That seems a bit odd to do the comprehensive bit at the end and not at the start. So why did you not do the comprehensive reorganisation and redesign of airspace first?
So the work on Package 4 has been progressed in parallel with the other packages. So it's been progressed in parallel. The reason that we're not implementing it first is that the nature of the work is quite complex. For every thing that you undo, it undoes something else, and so it has a much longer lead time to carry through to fruition. But it has it did commence at the same time as the other work. It will take longer to deliver because it's a bigger piece of work.
Okay. In relation to how big that piece of work genuinely is, I note that in the Canberra hearings of the Senate inquiry that was into aircraft noise, Mr Curran you were asked, I think, by Senator Colbeck, I've got the Hansard here, on the package 4 and the extent of changes, and you've said the thought of doing blah, 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 we'd look to make the changes necessary to get benefits for the community and to balance that with industry. I think the plain answer is we'd make as much change as we have to get outcomes, but as little as possible. I understand that statement got around Brisbane families and communities who've been suffering from flight noise for some time, and they feel somewhat underwhelmed by the aspirations to fix the problem that they're living under. Would you like to explain what you meant by doing as little as possible to change the airspace usage?
Yes, and to thank you. I think the full context of the answer that I gave is clear insofar as we are very much aware and get the feedback from communities that the amount of consultation and engagement that we've been undertaking over the last number of years can be fatiguing. And so it's important that we identify all the changes that we can and should make, and that's what I was referring to.
Okay, I think it's more the flight waking them up that's causing the fatigue, not the consultation on how to fix the flight noise. Just if you want to, would you like to rephrase
we
what
have
you've
had
just
feedback
said?
from communities that they are experiencing a level of consultation that they find frustrating and fatiguing at times. That's the feedback we've had.
Yes.
I don't for a moment.
But they still want their issue fixed.
Yeah, no
They're just
doubt,
sick of
Senator.
being asked how to do it because that's your job to do it.
Yes, but it's important that we consult with regards to the potential impacts for any changes that we make, and that's what the engagement's been about.
Okay. Are you receiving good feedback? Or
Senator,
are you receiving feedback that people are sick of being asked, they just want you to fix it?
Senator, it's mixed. There's definitely been some criticism, and we've tried to learn from that. But certainly, some of the feedback we've had has been that communities are experiencing serious impacts from aircraft noise. We are very mindful of that.
Okay. How many people have you got working on those various packages? Is there anything that you can do to speed up some of those timeframes, particularly the package 4 timeframe that you mentioned?
So we actually have a consultant that's working on package 3 and package 4, so Trax International, who supported our post-implementation review and were the independent reviewers through that process. They're delivering package 3 and 4. They are working through it as quickly as they can, but again, just due to the complexity, and there's a number of steps. While you look up in the sky and it's a fairly big blue expanse up there, there's a lot of things that need to be considered in changing a flight path. There's safety assessments, environmental assessments. You've got to make sure you've got separation and so forth. And then importantly, as Mr Curran was saying, that the engagement is absolutely critical, because while we might move a flight path to reduce the impact on one community, that impact could then shift to another. And we need to make sure that we're engaging fully and properly with all affected parties, both those that will benefit and those that may have an impact.
Yes, and you did mention that there was some small reduction plan, but it was a focus on noise sharing. Can you quantify how much net noise reduction is being planned, or are you just moving the flight paths about to spread the noise?
So at the moment, Senator, we've released concepts for some of the most frequently overflown locations in the city. So Trax have identified through a heat map where those locations are that are most frequently overflown and subject to the greatest number of operations, and they then develop concepts on how to reduce the concentration over those communities by sharing it with others. Again, there are no KPIs at this stage because they're at concept stage. They're in the process of reviewing the feedback, some 2,000 submissions that we got to that process. They're reviewing those at the moment, and then they'll be coming back with preferred designs, and that's when we'll be able to have some more tangible measures around what we believe the preferred options can and can't achieve for the community.
Okay, and will those options include reduction rather than just sharing?
Those options are around sharing as opposed to removing aircraft operations.
Will there ever be a consideration for net noise reduction?
So the short-term benefit is the sod props, that is a reduction. We've also been working with the airport and some of the larger carriers that generate noise at night. The community feedback I heard was some of those larger aircraft coming over the city at night troublesome for some of the residents. And so there has been a move by some of those airlines in the last month to actually go over the ocean more with a higher tailwind. So those pilots are selecting to do that because they're able to with their safety measures. And that's been a demonstrable shift. So there's about 2/3 of those flights are now going over the bay. So there are some short-term benefits that will reduce noise. However, clearly there's been an EIS signed off, there's runways being built, and there's been capacity that's been approved for that airport. What we're doing is managing the actual flow of that traffic. So that flow of traffic's been approved back in 2007, I think was the date for the EIS, many, many years ago. That noise is now coming through, the city's built up. To actually reduce that flying is actually a reduction of capacity to the airport, which is a decision we can't make. What we can do is move flight paths to mitigate as much as we can, or spread, but the sod props and the larger aircraft flying over the bay is a reduction. The other reduction that would occur is the tailwind. So at the moment, the EIS was based on a 10-knot tailwind assumption. That wasn't approved. And so we're working with industry as well as with Brisbane Airport to look at a 7-knot tailwind, and it actually will allow a lot more operations to go over the bay. That will reduce noise. So that's in play at the moment, and we'll be looking at some trials and presenting a pack to CASA to get a safety sign-off.
Okay, and when will that go to CASA?
Do you know what's the timeline?
It's being worked on at the moment, Senator. I think we were targeting either late this year or early next year, subject to the safety work being completed. We've also got Brisbane Airport Corporation have got some consultants involved in supporting that as well, to get an external consultant to pull that together. But we probably need to take the specific timing on notice if you wanted an exact
thank
timing.
you. That would be good. I appreciate that. Just in relation, sticking with airspace, in 2022 it was reported that Airservices asked Defence to free up some airspace for noise abatement. The military airspace above Amberley, as I understand it, restricts the ability of flight path planning. Have you had any further discussions with the RAF base in Amberley in relation to airspace for commercial flights?
Yeah, we've been engaging with Defence on an ongoing basis throughout the Noise Action Plan for Brisbane. We have had several meetings with them about it, and they're certainly amenable to those discussions, but we haven't yet been able to reach any resolution on that.
Okay. Why is that?
Amberley requires the airspace for their operations as well, so for them to relinquish any of that airspace, it would have a flow-on effect to the training and other activities that they do within their airspace. So it's something that it's just taking a little bit of time to work through with them.
So have they said no, or have they said we'll try to find a way?
They've said that they're happy to continue discussions with us.
To the end of finding a solution, or just dragging out saying no?
I believe they're looking to find a solution, but what that is, we don't know at this time.
Do you have a time frame on when you hope those conversations to conclude and hopefully resolve positively?
No firm time frame at this stage, Senator.
Okay.
Senator, if I could just add to that, we've got a large program called One Sky, which is a joint military-civil system. The reason that that's really critical is to address issues like this, because the capability of the Defence Force means that they're travelling further and they need more airspace to carve out to actually do their operations. That then puts more pressure back onto the commercial airspace. Yes. So ultimately that tool will enable more flexibility in managing that airspace. However, that's a good 2 years away before that's operational. So in the meantime, we're relying on conversations with the local Defence Force in Amberley.
Okay, thank you. Just a little more specificity about the specific work that's been done about that airspace planning. Have you proposed an amount of reduction to Defence in any of those conversations?
Senator, the main thing that we've been speaking with the Department of Defence about at Amberley is they've got the boundary of their airspace, the easternmost boundary. is we have to maintain a 3 nautical mile clearance from it, and so if we can, I guess, get that boundary to move further west, it means we can shift some of the flight paths that are affecting suburbs to the northwest of the airport. So we've been discussing that, and also there's a flight path that routes through Amberley airspace that we use when we're in that sod props mode, and so we've been working with the Department of Defence around how we can use that during daytime hours when Amberley airspace is active.
Okay. And so what are the barriers, if any, to them allowing a bit of flexibility on that 3 nautical mile boundary in the west?
I think that would be a question that would need to be put to the Department of Defence, Senator. I'm not aware of what they're...
not telling you?
No.
Okay. If Amberley were to release airspace for commercial flights, either of those 2 examples that you've just taken me through or any other possible change or release of airspace, what would be the expected impact on noise reduction for the local community?
So, Senator, if we were able to secure daytime access to the flight path that runs through Amberley that we use when we're in that sod props mode, it would make it easier for us to transition into that mode when other conditions allow in daytime hours, when we've got appropriate traffic levels and weather conditions. It would just make the airspace less complicated. And the other thing it would do is that if we could get that easternmost section of their airspace, we could shift some of the flight paths that are quite concentrated over those communities to the northwest of the airport and put those flight paths more over green space, noting we would still need to engage with people in those locations as well, but it would just give us more space to work with in terms of the final design of those flight paths.
Okay, so are you able to quantify your hoped for reduction, noise reduction?
Not at this stage, Senator, because we don't yet know what it is we'll be able to get access to.
Okay, great. And just last question from me, and this one is might involve the departmental bods. What data has been or will be provided to the Department of Infrastructure as part of the department's ongoing performance reporting and monitoring of air services? And as a follow-on, how will the department assess the impact of the noise action plan? I don't know who to direct that one to, I'm sorry.
Sure the department's here.
No. Oh, they're not even here.
So that would be a matter for the department, yeah.
Oh, well, could somebody take that on notice on my behalf for the department,
we'll take that on
please?
notice.
Thank you. Perhaps, Minister, that might be your job. Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair. Thanks for your time.
No worries. Are there any further questions? Senator McKenzie.
Thank you so much. Hi, Airservices Australia. Just on that, TRAC's consultant that you've got?
Consultants.
Yep. How much is that contract, that consultation contract for?
Senator, I'm advised that the contract for the TRAC's consultancy is $3.2 million.
3.2, and is that
that covers package 3 and 4.
Package 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And the 3.2 is only for 3 and 4, or is it for 1, 2, 3 and 4?
No, they're not doing 1 and 2, they're doing package 3 and 4.
Okay, and that's 3.2. Right. Just before we start, I've got a whole series of questions of some information out of your annual report, but I just wanted to understand, as part of your executive team, Mr Sharp, and I've got a little org chart here, how many have Qantas Chairman Lounge memberships?
None.
None. And how many of your board members?
I don't know. We'd have to ask the question for the board, but I presume they would have the membership.
Okay.
So I can take that on notice.
How does Airservices Australia manage the potential conflict of interest of board members who hold Chairman Lounge memberships?
I would grapple with what the conflict would be. The contract that we have with our customers, being the airlines, is actually basically signed off by the ACCC. So there's a negotiation process. It's fully transparent. The airlines put submissions in, and then the ACCC provides a balanced outcome, and that can be no objection, or it could be an objection, and then there's further consultation. But it is signed off through and negotiated through a very opaque or transparent process, I should say, signed off by the ACCC.
Okay, so from your perspective, you don't know if any of your board members have?
No,
Chairman?
I don't. I would have to ask the question of the board.
Yes, but you assume that, Mr Curran. Do you know? You've been around a while.
Senator,
it's not our first rodeo at this question.
Senator, whilst I don't know definitively, I believe that is the case. I can recall declarations in our board packs that deal with such matters, both for Virgin.
So with the declarations,
both Virgin and Qantas. Yeah.
Yep. So Virgin, and is that the Beyond Lounge?
I don't know the name of it, Senator.
But it's the fancy one.
I believe so. Yes.
If rumours are correct. And then the Qantas Chairman's Lounge. Of the board members, is it only your chair, or is it a number of them?
Senator, I don't know definitively. We'd be better to take it on notice. I'm certain that some do, but I just couldn't say definitively.
Yep, thank you. So, Mr Sharp, I know you say there potentially wouldn't be a conflict because of the relationship between Airservices Australia and the contractual arrangement with airlines.
In terms of
I might ask you on reflection to actually reflect on that evidence once you find out how many of your board members are members of the Chairman Lounge.
Yes.
And just on notice, with your executive team, do you know how many are ex-Virgin or Qantas employees?
I'm an ex-Virgin and Qantas employee.
Right, it's a small world, isn't it?
It is.
Aviation in Australia.
I don't think there's anyone else
On your executive team?
No, I don't believe so.
I work for the International Air Transport Association, so
I'm not asking for personal declarations of everyone at the table.
Sure.
It's just checking. Right, thank you. Now, lots happened since we were last here. Everyone's got their correct titles today? Excellent. Since we were last here, how many additional fully qualified air traffic controllers have been recruited to Sydney and Brisbane Tower?
Sydney and Brisbane. Mr Curran.
Senator, thank you. I'm going to get the numbers for Sydney and Brisbane specifically. I can give you the overall national story.
It's where the problem is. And it's where I'm exploring today. So if you could get this specific. I'd also like to know any redundancies this year. Who's getting you those numbers? Someone behind you? Can I have someone actually has heard Mr Curran's call?
Thank you. Mr Charker is going to come up.
Excellent.
Senator, Craig Charker, Acting Airspace and Network Officer. I don't have to hand the number of people recruited to. I can walk through the actual numbers.
My apologies. Officials. Pollen is high. The pollen count is high tonight. It's okay.
Senator, I think
Thanks. All right.
I think what we're proposing to be able to provide you now, if it's acceptable, is the number that we require in each of those, the number of air traffic controllers operational that we require in each of those towers, and the number that we currently have.
So you can't tell me, and we do this every estimate, talk about staffing and the problem with staffing and the need to improve. So I've asked, the first question is like, how have you gone since the last time we've been here, and you can't tell me?
Senator, we have had 53 endorsements of air traffic controllers nationally in the last financial year, and we are forecasting to deliver an additional 35 by the end of this calendar year.
Great.
As it relates, that's nationally. As it relates to the specifics of Brisbane and Sydney Tower, what we can provide now is information that says here's how many we need and here's how many we've got.
Okay, why don't we do it that way?
So, Senator, Sydney Tower requires 39 people in its requirement. And we have a total supply of people of 41 and 38 people available to work on the roster. So the 38 is less people on long service leave, people on extended absences.
So sorry, was that Brisbane or Sydney?
So that was for Sydney Tower.
And what about Brisbane?
Brisbane requires 33. We have a total supply of 37 and 29 available.
Right, so of the 53, the new ones,
Yes.
where are they going?
Senator, the 53 are the ones that we've had endorsed, so that's operationally join the organisation, go to a location and become operationally proficient to work there. That's already been deployed. The 35 new that are coming in by the end of this calendar year goes to our workforce planning, and we would be sending those on a prioritised basis across our 29 towers and the 2 major centres that we have nationally.
Okay, so of the 35, and you've got 29 towers, where in your priority list are Brisbane and Sydney for the 35? Top 5 towers?
Yes, Senator, they are always right on the top a couple of towers.
2?
They are in the top 2 or 3. But of course, Senator, it depends where the need is at the time also, and so there is a balance, but they are absolutely priorities.
On notice, please provide me the locations of air traffic controllers in each of your 29 locations. And I would like to understand the exits and recruitments for each posting. Are you able to run me through those figures, Mr Sharkar?
No, sorry, Senator.
What, you know? 29, and you haven't got how many you have and how many you need?
Yes.
You can run me through that?
Yes.
And do you have the exits? How many have left?
No, Senator.
Can you get me that on notice?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. So McKinsey's been engaged to advise on your restructure, is that correct?
Correct.
How much are we paying McKinsey?
I'd need to ask Ms Messer.
In terms of Senator Danielle Messer, Chief People and Culture Officer, in relation to the value of McKinsey, I will defer to Mr Logan.
Senator Paul Logan, Chief Finance and Performance Officer. To date, we have a contract with McKinsey for about $1.8 million.
And that's to help you restructure the organisation?
Yes, Senator.
Has any staff surveys been done by McKinsey?
Senator, we have recently completed the Organisational Health Index with McKinsey. That is a very comprehensive survey that covers something in the order of 43 management practices. We've recently completed that.
Okay. How many executives have you recruited this year?
We have to take that on notice. Are you talking the leadership team? The definition of executive can be quite broad, so we have heads of...
So if I go to your annual report on page 140, your executive is table 2. You've obviously got highly paid staff, etc. But as I understand it is your executive team. So how many executives have you employed this year?
What page was that again, Senator?
140.
140.
And then when I look at your org chart, in your executive structure, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
12. So that sounds like the executive leadership team.
Okay, so what would your executive look like then?
The structure remains the same as when I came in 12 weeks ago. Any change to the executive leadership team would take place once the role is permanently appointed.
So senior, just table on notice how many executives you've recruited this year, specifically around your leadership team. Are there any other vacancies in the leadership team other than CEO?
There's a number of people acting at the moment, Senator.
Why don't you run me through? If people are acting, does that mean there's vacancies? Thank you, Mr Curran. Run me through the acting roles. Why don't we run me through the vacancies in which people are acting?
Senator, yes. Mr Charker is acting in the Chief of Airspace and Network Officer role. We have another member of the team, Ms Peterson, who's acting in the Chief of Aerodromes Officer role.
Yep.
And that's it.
That's it.
So two. You're the CEO and two others.
And Senator, they are two new roles that were created recently to add more management capability into the frontline service delivery.
So you've added two executive roles to your structure?
It's a net increase of one.
Right, okay. Maybe I'll notice a full org chart, just so we can understand who's who in the zoo. Now, Mr Curran, you were appointed Deputy CEO in July, is that correct?
That's correct, Senator.
So, by my count, there were 9 executives at the end of last year, and the year before that there was 8. Is that correct? But by the end of this year, there'll be 12. So we've gone 8, 9, 12. But you're saying it's only an increase of 1.
Senator, I was making an observation of the increase of the 2 acting roles were previously undertaken in part by one role, and so we've separated that out, and that's now 2 roles. I wasn't making the comment with reference to the previous years.
Okay. Right, so executive remuneration in 22-23 was $5 million, and in the last annual report shows that it's ballooned out to 6.6. That's a 32% increase in executive salaries. What actual changes can we point to in the organisation, other than extra people, that this 32% increase in executive salaries has delivered?
Senator, while Mr Sharp is just referencing the annual report, I think the most important piece we would point to, or one of the most important pieces we'd point to, is the improvement in service performance over the last 6 to 8 months. There's been a marked improvement in our contribution to delay. It's to September is the most recent report. It's now 0.1% of all delay is attributable to Airservices. It's still not where we want it to be, but it's much improved.
But the executives aren't on the tools for the delays.
Senator, I think we're driving a performance culture into the organisation.
Senator, just on my document here, page 156, the base salary average for last year was 4.9 million. Sorry, for financial year 23, and for financial year 24 it was 5,050,000. So if you're looking at the base salary, it's gone up about 4%.
So my understanding is that in 2018-19, senior executive salary was 3.7 million. So, I mean, we can...
Sorry, going back 2017.
No, 18-19, and I'm saying 22-23. Anyway, 22-23 was 5.
Yes. Yeah, so in the last 12 months... And
your last annual report was 6.6, is a 32% increase.
The last annual report, this one has the 2023 numbers, which is 4.9.
Okay. So does Airservices Australia operate as a for-profit or a cost recovery model?
There's a base of assets that are utilised to provide the services to the airlines. That includes the air traffic control assets as well as the fire brigade assets. That has a capital return that's included on it. That's negotiated with the airports and reviewed by the ACCC. So it is a recovery through the industry. Is it cost
recovery?
Yeah.
It is cost recovery. And
it is cost recovery, yes. So that our customers...
So you're not required to pay Treasury dividends?
Sorry, pass to
Paul?
Mr Logan.
Sorry.
We are technically, yes, a for-profit entity.
Not cost recovery.
Embedded in the pricing structures that Mr Sharp's referring to is a cost recovery methodology that fits within that. So we do pay dividends to the government, and there's an expectation of paying dividends that's entrenched in our Act.
Right, thank you for clarifying that. Don't be shy in jumping in to assist the committee because it's getting late. Your Airways revenue for 24 was more than $1 billion, so that, by my calculations, is a 17% increase in revenue year on year, and nearly 100% increase on the 22 results. And yet you're running at a loss. Can you explain why?
Yes, Senator. Coming starts with COVID, Senator, where we lost about 80% of our revenue at that point in time.
Yeah, I'm saying it's a 100% increase. Oh, yeah, keep going.
So we have been increasing revenues progressively over the last number of years as the activity within the industry has been returning. Just trying to find my notes on that recovery pathway, Senator.
No, that's okay.
So our revenue in 2020, in financial year 2021, which was the most impactful year of COVID, our revenues were sitting at about $416 million.
You know, I appreciate that your revenue now is a 100% increase on the 22 revenue. I appreciate the impact of COVID.
Our revenues are still sitting below 2019 revenues, Senator, which is pre-COVID.
So you're running at a loss?
Yes, Senator. So our total revenues in...
And you're putting on executives. That's okay? So are you putting your loss down to COVID, recouping after COVID?
Senator, we've agreed a recovery path with the government in terms of returning to profitability out by financial year 27-28.
And are you tracking accurately against that?
We are. Our latest corporate plan is showing how we track towards that, Senator.
Well, just inform me in case I haven't read it cover to cover.
So our latest corporate plan tracks our forecasts for this year. So in financial year 2024, our net profit after tax was about $160 million. Sorry,
Yep.
Net loss after tax.
Yep.
The financial year 2025 forecast is for a net loss after tax of $55 million. For FY26 of $19 million.
Yep.
Heading towards a profit after tax of $55 million in FY27.
Yep.
And $97 million in FY28.
Great. So thank you for outlining that.
Senator, two observations, if I may. If you go back to financial year 19 and compare it to 24,
Yep.
The pricing that we've been charging the industry has actually gone down by 24% in real terms because there's been no effective increase in the pricing through that period. So that's part of the challenge. The other challenge is that my personal observation is that the organisation isn't efficient. So there is a $60 million. Hello,
Mr. Sharp. I'm going to call you Captain Understatement.
That's right. Thank you.
From now on.
So there is a $60 million challenge that's in efficiency benefit that we've got to deliver in the current financial year to achieve the corporate plan. And that's what we're working on at the moment.
All right. So does that partially account for why you increased your fees by 6%?
Yes, it is. So there's the 6% just reflects the fact that for 10 years, not quite, 6 years, we've had an effective decrease in fees, and that there's a whole raft of reasons for that, including COVID. But putting COVID aside, there's not a recovery of the costs. We need to be able to go to the airlines and say we're running efficiently, and when we do the next ACCC review in 18 months' time, actually show and demonstrate that we're running an efficient business, and then there'll be a price reset off the back of that, bearing in mind we've got quite a lot of technology investments that will be delivering benefits to the industry.
And is that because you're only able to deliver sort of 80% of your planned capacity in some of these airports?
In terms of planned capacity, our target's about 83%. Typically it's weather driven, but we actually hit that target in the metric that's in the financial report for FY24 was 83%. So that's delivering planned capacity. Service variations is the one that is impacted by staff shortages at the moment. And the plan is by early 2025, in other words, post-Christmas, we will have enough heads in the ATC team to be able to eliminate or substantially reduce that issue.
Mr. Curran, how many people report to you directly?
Senator, direct reports, I've got two large programs and our audit and group risk function. So 3 direct reports at present.
3 direct reports. Okay. The annual report shows that your targets for planned capacity is as low as 78% for Sydney Airport, charging fees, and I'm just wondering how you justify the 6% increase in fees given that they're only getting 80% of the service. Mr. Sharp.
I'm not sure what service statistic you're referencing there, Senator.
Well, the planned capacity.
Planned
Sydney,
capacity
I'm specifically talking about Sydney Airport.
Is that the 83% or the Sydney?
Well, my understanding is your annual report shows your targets for planned capacity is as low as 78% for Sydney Airport.
Mr. Curran, can you
Senator, if I may,
talk to the
So we've sort of
capacity
got
definition?
the thing I'm looking at: Sydney 78, Melbourne. Oh, sorry, now my
And the average is 83.
Melbourne 79, Perth's 82, Brisbane's 93.
Yeah, and the average is 83. So we're talking the same statistic.
Yes,
Thank
but
you,
I'm
Senator.
interested in specifically the 83 average goes to 81% in Sydney, 79 in Melbourne, 83 in Perth, 89.
Yes, I'll ask Mr. Chakra to talk specifically to
I'm
Sydney.
trying to understand.
Yeah, if I may. So the plan capacity...
If your offering is so bespoke, given the different rates for each of these airports, why you haven't chosen to marry the price, the price increase in fees related to the planned capacity expected?
The planned capacity metric, Senator, is one that effectively measures predictability. It's when we run the ground delay program the evening before. We make an estimate based on weather conditions and other factors, etc., for what will be the arrival rate in the system, and then we would run the ground delay program based on that, and then we'll measure post what was actually achieved. So that what we planned the night before can vary due to different weather forecasts.
So why is the target in Sydney Airport for ground delays less than 70 hours, yet in Melbourne the target is 0? How does that work?
I think some of the targets metrics that have been established there have been based on history of what we've actually been achieving for those.
But shouldn't your
airports.
target be for 0 ground delays?
That's not a ground delay metric for that.
Attributable to ground delay.
If we had perfect forecasts of weather, I agree. You know, these are the factors that play out for the next day, where we see variations. Again, Senator, it's a measure of predictability for how accurately we're setting the ground delay program to what was actually achieved on the day.
Senator, perhaps.
Yeah, see, I just can't find it incredible that somehow Sydney is less, has more weather issues than Melbourne, and I think anybody listening would see the same. And I want to understand why Brisbane is so high as well. It's got no restrictions on it like Sydney does, for instance, in terms of the curfew.
So basically it's a forecast for operational reasons for the airports, for the airlines for the following day. So if we don't, if we just put the capacity in and left it, if a storm comes through, there's a lot of flight cancellations. So the purpose of this is to try and almost predict the weather for the following day, so that the airlines can proactively cancel flights, reschedule customers, and get the customers to where they need to be and avoid effectively aircraft getting stuck on the ground and lots of passengers clogging up terminals. So the airlines and the airports like that forecast. So it's a predictability forecast, not a capacity forecast. The closer you can get to it, the better the optimal outcome is for the whole ecosystem. So that's an important one, looking at our ability to predict weather for the following day, effectively.
So, sorry, the difference in targets, for instance, 0 for Melbourne and 70 hours on, for Sydney, is that your ability to predict is better in Melbourne than it is in Sydney?
Senator, I think we moved into the Airservices attributable ground delay. Is that
that's what
correct?
I did. I
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Ground delay.
Sorry, my apologies. That again, yes, we tend to have more Airservices attributable ground delays. So the delay that we would say is due to our services, that tends to be higher at Sydney, associated with staffing and things like that. It is demonstrably reduced.
Thank you, because I thought I was going insane just then.
No, but there's two separate.
No, I know that, which is why I couldn't appreciate. Anyway. All right. I will put some questions on notice about that, because I do think there's some issues around there, and I think Senator McDonald's got some questions for Airservices Australia.
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I won't be long. I just want to turn to Northern Australia airfields. I wonder if you've got any data on number of flights that have been unable to land because of weather.
Senator, that's not a statistic I have to hand. Maybe to explain some of the complexity there, it would very much depend on the aerodrome.
Could I be more specific then, that might help you?
Thank you, yes.
So Mount Isa is the largest inland city in northern Queensland, and I have had the joy of, on several occasions, being turned around at the airstrip and having to get in my car in Townsville and drive back to Mount Isa, along with medical specialists, conference attendees, families. And Qantas tells me it's because Airservices has not installed the suitable equipment at Mount Isa that would allow them to do instrument landings for low visibility approaches.
Senator, I'll have to take that on notice. There's a number of different systems, instrument landing systems, but there are other mechanisms that we have in place to lower the minima that can mean a flight is more likely to be able to get into a location or land at a location. I'd have to take on notice the exact navigation infrastructure we have at Mount Isa and come back to you with what that is.
All right. Well, just so that to speed up time for the next estimates, if you could do that specifically for Mount Isa.
Yes.
But if you could take a look across Northern Australia at airfields, and particularly those ones with high traffic that are, going to have a significant impact on population, hospitals, all those sort of things, when aircraft aren't able to land there, whether it be from Brisbane or Townsville or Mount Isa or from Cairns. And particularly when it's over a couple of days. It's a really significant issue, and I am surprised in 2024 we're still doing this.
Senator, we'll take that on notice. On the other locations, just while you were talking, we pulled up the data on Mount Isa. There is three types of instrument navigation there. But again, perhaps I'll take that on notice rather than try to go into the technicalities of what those instrument navigates are. I think Qantas may have been referring to an instrument landing system, and the change between what's there now and an instrument landing system is quite significant in terms of cost and investment. So we need to understand exactly what Qantas's perspective on that was.
That would be good, and then I'd like to understand what that request is, because if you can do an instrument landing in Brisbane and Cairns and Singapore, and Mount Isa produces billions of dollars of ore every year and a significant Northern Australia community, I'd like to know why it's a lesser destination than, I assume, Alice Springs or some of the others.
Senator, as part of the negotiation for the pricing with the airlines, there's a list of projects, and there's a prioritisation exercise that occurs. We can certainly look to talk specifically to those in that next prioritisation list, because that would be needing to be funded, quite substantial dollars, and often there are trade-offs in those conversations. If Qantas has raised it, we'll obviously talk to them to clarify specifically what their priority is.
To be fair, I probably raised it, but they tell me that the new planes that they're ordering, they've specifically ordered it with the necessary equipment from their end.
That could be another capability that they're referring to then, Senator. So thank you. We'll inquire with Qantas.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Airservices, Sayonara. And we'll call Western Sydney Airport